We're just going to wait a couple more minutes for everyone to join, and then we're going to get started soon. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Sharon Madar, and most of you know me already. I'm an account executive here at Stratoscale, and I'm excited to be hosting this session today. Today is our second session, and we'll focus on a deep dive into networking, and I hope you will find it very helpful. I'm pleased to introduce today's speaker, Liaz Kamper. Liaz has been with Stratoscale for over 5 years and is a member of our Cloud Architects team, and he knows Symphony inside out. Now, before I hand over the mic to Liaz, I have a few housekeeping items to cover about this presentation. Firstly, today's webinar will take around 20 minutes, followed by Q&A. The webinar will be available on demand after the live session, and we will send you out a recording by email. Now, if you have any questions for our speaker, please feel free to send it through Ask a Question tab, and we'll answer the questions at the end of the session. Now, if we don't get your question answered during today's webinar, we will be sure to follow up afterwards. Your opinion is important to us, so during this session, we'll run a poll to learn more about the topics you would like for us to cover in future sessions, and also to see what you think of this session. So, without any further ado, I'd like to kick things off by welcoming Liaz. Liaz, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sharon, and hi everyone. I'm happy to see you again here in the webinar, and where we'll deep dive into networking. In the last webinar, we did some shallow walkthrough of all the elements that we offer in our VPC networking, and now we're gonna deep dive, and now we're gonna put everything together into one big session. So I hope you can you see my screen? Okay, so everybody can see my screen. And we're going to deep dive into this three-tier application. We talk about a lot about the three-tier application, but it's extremely important. So again, three-tier application. We have 3 tiers. Now actually we can see 2 tiers. One is presentation, compute, and presentation, application, and the database layer. So in the presentation layer, where we're going to focus today, we have everything which is external facing, okay, web facing. We have Elastic Load Balancer. We're going to discuss about the public instances, specifically Bastions. We're going to talk about the web facing instances, By the way, you can also place them in the public. And then we have the private subnet, which will hold the application instances. So basically, if we take out all the workloads, we're staying with this. That's exactly what we're going to dissect today. We have a Symphony region. We will build a VPC with an internet gateway, and then we'll build all the infrastructure that we need for a three-tier application. We're going to do it over the UI. So I'm going to switch over to the UI. I'm going to switch back again to this diagram as needed. This is our UI. In case you're wondering, I'm still running our latest version, 5.1.3. So in case you have other versions installed, then you might see some differences also in the networking. And we'll go directly into our VPC. And we'll create a VPC. We'll call it webinar. We're going to give it a CIDR 172.31.00/16. And we're going to soon, let's create the internet gateway now. I explained what is an internet gateway in the last session. Okay, it is created and appended. And now I have a VPC. Okay, so if I go to the overview and I'll choose the webinar VPC, you can see that I have the webinar VPC. I already have an internet gateway, and this is the default route table. So the route table gives us the ability to route between subnets, and more importantly, between subnets and some other target. So in this specific case, whichever route table that will be allowed to access the internet gateway, is a public route table. Now, all of the access goes in one direction. So if a route table can access the internet gateway, it can only go out from the internet gateway. And if it needs to go in, then we do need an elastic IP. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We're going to have some work to do before we're going to do that. So again, VPC, default route table, and IGW. Next, we're going to create a couple of subnets, okay? So we're going to have the public subnet. Let's call it public webinar. And this time just mind the VPC CIDR /24. That's okay. Oops. Okay, so we have this subnet. Let's create another subnet since we want a private one. Private webinar. Choose the correct VPC 172.31. This is going to be 20. Again, everything is carved out of the VPC. And we have another subnet. So we can see everything here. Again, in our webinar, we can see again default route table, public webinar, private webinar, and the webinar internet gateway. Okay. So by default, public webinar is connected to the default route table, but we're going to change that. So next, so let's see what we've done so far. We created the demo VPC, the internet gateway, public subnet, and private subnet. Okay, we're going to only refer to the public subnet app. Next, let's create a public route table. Now that's very important. We're going to create. Okay, so the subnets are by default connected to the default route table. We're going to change that. Let's create two route tables. Okay, so we're going to do public route table webinar and connect it to this VPC. Great. And then we're going to do a private one. Now that's a tricky part, so you need to stay with me. So as I've said, we have the private RTB. Let's go to here, this subnet association, and we're going to make it explicit. We're going to disconnect private webinar, and we're going to disconnect public. Okay, so we're going to go back to our route table, and we're going to choose public. And we'll associate the public webinar. Here it is. Now it's associated. Okay, so as you can see, public webinar, okay, is associated to public Roundtable webinar. Okay, but this is not enough, because as you can see here, public subnet needs to directly go. Okay, you can see this table. I need to state everything that goes to any needs to go to the internet gateway. So let's do that. Let's add a route here. We're going to create a route, and we're going to say any, which is 0000, goes to VPC Internet Gateway. There's another peering connection that we might do when we talk about peering later on, and we're adding the route. Okay, so now you can see that we have all the packet flow that we need. We have a public webinar. It connects into a public route table, and this one in turn connects into the IGW. Okay, so everything in the public webinar can actually access the webinar IGW. Okay, now let's go and consider the private route table. Now here I need to make a statement. In AWS, if you're dealing with private route tables, there is an option to add a NAT gateway inside a public subnet, and from there to hop into the webinar IGW. Since we don't have the option of NAT gateway, we need also to connect the private route table into the webinar IGW. Now, you need to do that only for your instances in the private route table to be able to access the internet. For example, if you need your application servers and so on to do yum install. Okay, that's a very basic example. Once they're done with yum install, or they don't need it, or for example, you're using an image that is already installed, then you can cut that route and have it already isolated. So let me show you how to do that. So we have a private route table. I'm going to associate private webinar. Okay, so this is the desired pattern. I have public webinar connected. By the way, public webinar obviously can route into private webinar because they're in the same VPC. But right now, private webinar cannot route into the internet gateway. And basically it doesn't need to, again, unless you need to yum install something or a cloud in it. So in that case, you just go here. You can script it, by the way. You can create a route. Do, for example, by the way, you can do a specific thing, a specific IP or CIDR. In this specific case, I'm going to state any. Okay. And then in the overview, you can see that this also connects to the IGW. Okay, right here. Let's say we're done with that route. You can easily, again, private route table, we can easily remove it. Let's go to the overview. and it is removed. And this is it. So this is very important in case you want things to be totally isolated. Let's see how you can further isolate your applications. So here we have, so we already created the public subnet. We already created the internet gateway. We created the public route table. We already also created a private route table, which is only local, okay, for most cases. And now we're going to create what we see here as a Bastion, and we're going to explain exactly what we're going to do with it, okay? So in order to have a Bastion, let's create the Bastion instance, okay? First, we're gonna create a security group, and then we're gonna create an Elastic IP, okay? So let's create a webinar, okay, Bastion SG, webinar. We're gonna add the rule egress of TCP SSH, okay, port 22, and any is fine because we want everybody to be able to access webinar. And for egress, for now we're going to do any. It can access everybody, okay? So I've created this security group, okay? So now let's go ahead and create another security group, which is the web security group, okay? And then we're going to think through how we're going to exactly want to create web security group. So web security group, okay, I'm going to do webinar web SG, again, choose webinar VPC. Now for web server, obviously the ingress is TCP protocol 80. Let's assume that we're using 80, and it can arrive from any, and egress, we're going to do any, okay? Okay, but something is missing. So let's go again to the webinar, to the web, and I want to do this. I want to say, I want also be able to access using SSH. So TCP 22, but doesn't have to be, it can be any, okay? So I'm saying I will allow the Bastion to ingress using TCP port 22, okay? So that, again, that's super easy. So right now I was able to do this flow, okay? I'm allowing to go to the public instance from anywhere using port 82, to port 22. And to the web servers, I'm allowing anyone to go port HTTP 80, so we can do a web service. But for SSH instance, I am only allow it through the public Elastic IP, which is also, but again, through the Bastion. So now I want to stop and relax for a second, and I'm very curious about a few things. So let's have a polls. So the first poll is I'm curious what are actually in main interest in the network. Okay, when you come to design a network, what is the main interest? Okay, is it security? Is it performance? Is it actually ease of use or availability? So we're gonna wait for a few seconds until you guys answer. Okay, let's. Okay, let's close the poll and see what's the. Okay, so actually most of you are interested in security. That's fine. So I'm happy that since the webinar is mostly focused on security, and I hope you guys now understand how we can fully secure your application in Symphony. And next, we're going to have another poll. And the other poll is looking forward. Okay, so last time you told me that you want to do deep dive into networking, and I see that a lot of people showed up. So that's great. So tell me what you want to talk about next. Load balancing, Kubernetes, databases. Maybe you want to deep dive into advanced compute subjects. Answer. Let me know. So I can tell you that I see the results, and hands down, it's going to be Kubernetes. One of my most favorite subjects. Also, the video that we did a while, it gains a lot of views. So I'm not surprised that you chose Kubernetes. So we're gonna have Kubernetes, and we're gonna also, if we're already doing Kubernetes, the next subject is how we can actually use and broker services from Symphony directly into Kubernetes, and show you exactly why Symphony is a great platform to run Kubernetes on-prem. So that's it for the polls. So let's go in and deploy Bastion and see exactly how it works. So now I would like to deploy 2 instances. Okay. Okay. Webinar Bastion. Okay. I'm using as an IL. Okay, that's Ubuntu Cloud Image, very popular and works great. I truly recommend it. It's large, and I want it deployed in the public webinar. Okay, next. You're gonna know next. Now that's super important. Use a key pair. Okay, so maybe in advanced compute, we're gonna go exactly how you manage and how you produce a key pair, but it's very important to use key pairs when you're using a cloud image. Actually, it's a must, and also for your security. Okay, so let's go with key pair, and we're done. And let's create a webinar app. Okay. So again, Zenile, all-time favorite. Let's do a T2 large. That's going to be in the private webinar. Okay. And next. Now for the next trick, I'm going to use the same key pair. Okay. You don't have to use the same key pair. If you don't use the same key pair, then you need to go in and set the new key pair inside the Bastion, but I'm going to skip all that and just use the same key pair. And then you see that actually I'm doing a nice trick in the end. And now I'm spawning the application. So while the application is spawning, I would like to give, just like in my, okay, I want to give the public Elastic IP to the Bastion. I'm going to go to Elastic IPs. I'm going to attach, let's create one. Thank you. Created, it will soon appear here. Great. Okay. So the Elastic IP is 107. I'm SSHing using -I. Okay, so I'm giving it the private key. Okay, let's see that I've correct security groups. Oh, I need to, again, my bad, I need to attach the webinar Bastion security group. Let's retry that. Oh, still didn't attach. Oh, make sure you tick this one, okay? Here, I'm inside the Bastion, okay? And if I open a ping on the application, I could ping from here and actually inside the VPC. So what I can do next is this. I'm going to go to the other instance I created. Okay, so just to put you in context, I managed to SSH into the Bastion. Now let's see how I seamlessly jump from the Bastion into the application instances. Okay, so at this point, by the way, you can create an Elastic Load Balancer and connect the target group to the application. Super easy, but I'm here to show you security. So let's go to the application, and doesn't have obviously an Elastic IP. So let's attach it to the web security group. Click here. Okay, so let me just remind you that the web security group allows me to go HTTP from anywhere and ingress port 22 just from the bastions. Okay, so I'll just do this. -J, first jump into the bastion, and then the second jump will be into the instances, into the instance itself. That's 172.31.24. 172.31.20.4. Okay. And I'm in. Okay. So in one command, I jumped directly through the bastion and I'm inside the application. Okay. I cannot do it anywhere. I'm fully secured inside my application, and now I can also connect, for example, a load balancer. Okay, connect Elastic IP, but we're going to talk about all of this part in our load balancing session. So I would like to thank you all, and I'll be very happy to receive now questions, and I hope everything was understood. Okay, so someone's asking, are there any special networks for services such as Kubernetes or DBAS? So about Kubernetes networking, actually no, there's no special networking for Kubernetes. We're going to discuss it in the Kubernetes webinar. Regarding DBAS, well, not in AWS there is a special network, but no, in Symphony there's no special networking. You just attach a DBAS into let's say a private network, and just make sure that in terms of route tables and security groups, you're able to access from the application instances into the, which is in the application layer, into the database layer. So the answer is yeah. For Kubernetes, no. For database, also no. So actually, okay, there's another question. Why do we need the DHCP option set? Extremely good question, since I kind of skipped that. Let's go to networks. DHCP option is just the DHCP, like how you're able to configure the DHCP. Okay, so if I create a DHCP option, that will be the webinar DHCP option. That's my DNS domain. Okay, so I can do sim.local. Okay, and this is how I can actually put DNS service into the system. I'm just going to go next, not going to use any NetBIOS. And the next time we will reboot the Bastion, for example, it will get that DNS into its system. Okay, actually, it will be configured on Symphony, and it will be able to use any DNS service from this DNS. So webinar DHCP, the DHCP option is mainly used to set DNS that will be conveyed into the instances using obviously DHCP. Okay, we have another question. Can we change the subnets after deployment? So I guess you mean the subnet CIDR. So mostly no. So if I go to private and I'll modify, you cannot really change it. If you need to change it, you need to remove all the instances and actually recreate the subnet, which is kind of intrusive. Another question, which other purpose I can use for route tables? I can say that there is other purpose for route table, except for routing in between subnets and IGW. I did mention that you can use the route tables in order to route between your subnet into VPC peering, which we'll cover in another session. So let's wait a few more minutes to see if we have other questions. Okay, so this is it. Thank you very much for joining. Many people attended. I'm really happy. I'm looking forward to our next session will be Kubernetes. And I would like to thank Sharon. Thank you very much, Sharon, and Ifat for arranging this great webinar. So thank you guys. Bye-bye.